Welcome to Civitas LA, where we feature diverse and emerging leaders who make up this dynamic region and are creating community every day and building a better tomorrow. Thank you again for joining us as we continue our four-part series where we take a look at dynamic leaders who are moving South Los Angeles forward. Once again, we just want to thank Councilmember Curran Price for introducing our series, and we also want to thank Darrell Nation and One Nation's Legacy LLC for their generous sponsorship of this four-part series on South Los Angeles. Empowering youth, connecting people to employment, training, and financial literacy services, providing housing for homeless youth, developing affordable housing, and preserving the legendary Central Avenue Jazz Festival. These are just a few of the many initiatives carried out by Mark Wilson, co-founder, president, and CEO, and his team at the Coalition for Responsible Community Development. Mark, welcome to Civitas LA.
Thank you.
First, share with our audience, how long have you served at CRCD?
So I've been in leadership at CRCD since inception. So we're now 15 years old. It feels like 30, but I've been in leadership for 15 years.
Excellent. How did you get involved in CRCD? How did you decide to co-found this organization?
Some of the co-founders and I, well, all of the co-founders and I worked in the neighborhood for a number of years. That neighborhood is the Vernon Central community of South Los Angeles. We, for whatever reasons, the organization that we worked for prior had some challenges, and we recognized that there was a vacuum in social services and development, economic opportunities in that community. And so we got together literally in one of the co-founders' living room. Her name was Noemi Soto, and came up with this concept, which we know today as CRCD, but it was driven by wanting to be good stewards of public resources and private resources, and looking at the opportunity to really collaborate and bring new energy into the community and bring new talent into the community. And so that was the driving force.
And so you had been involved in community development prior to starting CRCD. Was there anything in your educational background that got you involved in community development? Was this always a passion and interest of yours?
Absolutely not. I actually started my journey because I wanted to be a elementary school teacher. Throughout my, elementary career, when I was a young man, all of my teachers were women of color, but I rarely saw men. And then because I worked throughout high school at a nursery school as a teacher's aide, I saw the impact that I was having even as a teenager with young men of color that were 4 and 5 years old. So I said, that's what I'm gonna do. And then I got into the community development aspect because actually after the 1992 uprising, that kind of sparked a different path for me. And so my journey began that way.
Mark, I know you referenced the Vernon Central area of South Los Angeles. Can you give our audience a greater sense of the geographic area that you focus on?
South LA, as we know, is a huge area that spans from Alameda or the Alameda corridor all the way to nearly the airport. Our area is everything east of the USC area for the audience that kind of need landmarks, and everything south of the 10 freeway, all the way south till you get to Watts.
Wow.
So a 15.2 square mile area.
Which is larger than most cities in the region. What are some of the unique challenges, would you say, of your service area versus other parts of South Los Angeles?
So in our service area, Vernon Central, it's historically known as Historic South Central. It's also the destination and landing location for many African Americans historically that were migrating from the South. Because of restricted covenants that spanned it all the way to the mid-50s, many African American professionals resided in that area, owned businesses in that area, and economically infused capital in that area, which is why the Dunbar Hotel and many other historic landmarks existed. The challenge over the years since the 50s is economic disinvestment in the neighborhood. So you saw a lot of the globalization impacts in our neighborhood. So where you had General Electric, you had Goodyear Tire Plant, you had Firestone, you had all of these major companies between the 40s and the 50s. They left, and a lot of economic investment left out of the neighborhood as well when restricted covenants were lifted. And so, because of decades and decades of disinvestment, some of the challenges we have is investment, securing investment that includes social and economic investment. So investment in infrastructure, but also investment in the capital that's there within young people and residents and business owners.
Sure. Can you share? You mentioned how the area was a large African American population coming from the South, particularly as the demographics of Los Angeles have changed over the years and over the decades. How has the demographics of this community evolved over the 15 years that you've led CRCD?
So over the 15 years, I would say the demographics haven't changed much. The demographics have been for the last 20, 25 years. Predominantly Latino. So I would say percentage-wise, from the last census, 85% of the community is Latino, 12% is African American, and there's 3% that's other. We're still trying to find that other.
Okay.
But it's predominantly Latino community, and within the Latino community, there's a mix of Mexican, Honduras, you have Caribbean, you have a lot of different cultures and communities within a community or neighborhoods within the community that makes Vernon Central pretty unique.
You referenced, the number of large companies that used to be in South Los Angeles no longer in the area. With the changing economy and the demographics as they are, how has this impacted your program development and delivery of programs?
So I believe it goes back to investment and having targeted investment in the community, but it has not necessarily impacted our programs per se. It impacts the way that investment flows and capital is flowing through the community that we access, particularly for housing and commercial development. With respect to programs, globalization or the impacts of disinvestment didn't necessarily impact our program. I would just think that social disinvestment over the decades is what impacted our program. And as CRCD came along over the last 15 years, we've been able to place a spotlight on the community to show actual impacts that investment can have in the community. So investing in programs like CRCD operates and manages, but also other organizations that's in the area that's doing really good work, and being able to demonstrate that capacity is where we've been going. But the impacts have been more so on economic investment and really having vehicles in the neighborhood to target that type of capital.
What are some of the forces, positive, negative, currently that are impacting the community and how you carry out your work? And can you speak to, obviously the situation that we're all facing ourselves with now with regard to the COVID pandemic and how that is shaping your work and how you position the organization to serve this community going forward?
Well, COVID, as well as the economic and injustice realities that we're dealing with, or injustices that we're dealing with, but COVID kind of took us all by surprise. And the way that it has impacted our work is that, of course, at CRCD, we had to continue to provide services because we provide essential services to individuals that are homeless and services in the neighborhood as a whole. So we had to adjust the way that we deliver program to practice good, safe distancing. A lot of our staff had to work remotely, but more so what it presented was an opportunity to complete or undergo a stress test of some sort of the organization, of being able to handle adverse situations that come up, and you can't get any more adverse than COVID.
Sure.
And so just being able to conduct some form of a stress test on our organization and how we respond, and I would say we responded really well with shifting policy, internal policies of how to support our staff and keep them safe, but also how we continue to support our constituents or individuals that we serve on a daily basis, and making sure that services were accessible to these individuals. Now, for the community, I think we had to band together as organizations, as political partners, to really think through ideals on how service delivery happens, how we continue to ensure that resources flow into our area. As many know, our area did not receive the necessary resources for testing and other health resources that other communities received when the pandemic broke out, or the stay-at-home order, I would say, occurred in early March. And so CRCD, along with other great organizations, advocated, and now we have those resources in place. One would argue that it's still limited, but because of political allies and leadership, they've been able to push for those resources to come in. And then on top of one national emergency, we had to deal with another national emergency with the George Floyd unfortunate killing by an officer in Minneapolis that broke out the whole notion of injustices that many members of our community had been dealing with for a number of decades. And so being able to balance those two things kind of allowed groups to come together, groups that normally didn't work together, to look at the greater good of investment and work that needed to occur in neighborhoods like ours. And I think the work of CRCD is just lifting up that Vernon Central actually exists, because a lot of people don't know of a Vernon Central community. They hear South LA, and typically you think Watts, or you think Crenshaw Leimert Park, and in the middle is Vernon Central and Manchester Square and other areas. And I think what it did was allow us to come together.
Now, that's excellent. You know, looking at the social justice issues, looking at the economic calamity caused by the COVID-19, you know, how do you sit back and with your colleagues determining how you move the community forward, and how do you leverage these two, you know, really just, you know, big events to say, okay, you know, what are the lessons that we can take from this, and how do we position ourselves to move forward, to pick up the steam that we need to move forward?
I think one thing is continue to collaborate. I think collaboration is key to change in our community, and collaboration to where each group recognizes their strength, and each group doesn't try to veer in lanes or areas of expertise that they have no expertise in. And I think for CRCD, we know we have expertise in workforce development amongst youth and adults, as well as housing development, particularly for special needs populations as homeless youth, specifically. So collaboration is key. I don't see any one group being able to handle this going forward alone. I don't think that any one mega group can come in, or as we say, parachute into the neighborhood and solve all of the problems. These problems will be solved by a collection of reputable community-based, or as we say, place-based organizations that have been and will be committed to those communities and understand the neighborhoods and the culture within those communities. And then it needs to be coupled with investment. We need real investment that is invested into these organizations, not only in building ongoing leadership in people of color, particularly Black leadership, but also investment in projects and businesses in our neighborhoods. But that's where we see the opportunity, is where you can make a economic and social investment in long-term change in these communities. But that vehicle is only driven by a collection of experts in the community, and those are community-based organizations that are working with politicians, that are working with local law enforcement, that are working with city and county government. There's a collection of and a collaboration that needs to occur, but not only sitting around a table and meeting and talking and pontificating about ideas and stars and moons. We actually need resources to hit the ground, to invest in the people, to invest in the infrastructure, to invest in the long-term change in our neighborhood.
That's great to hear you talk about collaboration and partnership because, that's one of the things that we hope to foster here through our show. Your organization undertakes a wide range of program areas, particularly in the area of housing and youth housing and affordable housing and homeless housing. Can you speak to some of those initiatives?
So affordable housing, as we know, is a pandemic of itself in California or probably nationally. In our area, we tend to focus on homeless youth because homeless youth has uptick in populations that are homeless in LA County. So the most recent homeless count for 2020 showed a 19% increase in homeless youth. These are our young babies that are sleeping in parks, sleeping in cars, are sleeping in our community from couch to couch or wherever they can find a place to lay their head. So we're proud to be able to, in partnership with some reputable organizations and on our own, to actually build affordable housing, but permanent supportive housing targeting homeless youth as well as homeless families. Permanent supportive housing is particularly important for young people because it literally means that that young person doesn't have to have anxiety about their place in or their apartment sunsetting on them because it's not transitional, it's not temporary, it's not emergency. And I'm not saying, and we're not saying that those types of housing is not important because they are essential in providing and addressing the need for housing our young people. But at the end of the spectrum, people need to have a permanent place, a permanent affordable place to live. And the great thing is that we have good partners in this project. We're partnering with LA Family Housing for the project on 69th and Main. It's called Residence on Main. They'll have the wraparound support services they need to be successful. And we're not suggesting that they're going to stay there forever, but we're suggesting that they're going to stay there until they're sustained enough to be able to move on to other types of housing.
A number of organizations, focus on seniors. Some focus on veterans. Your organization particularly focuses on youth in the age group of 18 to 24. How did you come to that particular focus group?
So when we started the organization, we looked at the 2010 census. So that was 5 years into our organization's humble beginning in 2005. And after looking at the data, we clearly saw that the age group of focus is 18 to 24. We also recognize that Vernon Central is a relatively young community where 3/4 of the community were between 16 and 30 years old, where we saw some of the challenges as we took a deep dive into the data, particularly around housing, educational attainment, employment, and crime. We saw that the age group that was having the most challenges in all of those areas was between 18 and 24. We saw high ticks or increases in the number of young people being incarcerated. We saw, unfortunately, an increase in young people, same age group, that wasn't obtaining their high school diploma or postgraduate degrees. We also saw that the unemployment rate was really high amongst that population between 18 and 24. And of course, the homeless rate was at an uptick with that population. So as an agency, we decided that was the age group that we were going to focus on. And if we focused on education, housing, and employment, given that that age group was the majority of the population in the Vernon Central community, we felt that that could speak to change in the neighborhood over time.
So you're housing youth 18 to 24, and giving them a stable environment in which to live. And obviously, the next step in that process is to engage in education, training, and workforce development, which I know is a huge area for CRCD. Can you speak to some of the initiatives in the workforce development area, and what are some of the successes you were having or are having in that area?
So one of the successes is being able to partner with an institution in our area, Los Angeles Trade Tech Community College. And with that partnership, we were able to bring on or start a national program called the South LA Youth Bill. So South LA Youth Bill is a program designed and targeted at young people between 18 and 24 that reside in South Los Angeles, that for whatever reason they didn't complete high school, but they have an interest in the construction trade. And because we were building affordable housing for that population, South LA Youth Bill was born out of that comprehensive approach to community development. From there, we were able to partner with Youth Build Charter School of California to actually operate and manage a high school also on the campus of LA Trade Tech Community College called the CRCD Academy. And CRCD Academy targets the same population, provides them with a educational plan to complete their high school diploma. But what's unique about being on a college campus is that those young people are dual enrolled both in the high school as well as the college. So when they enroll in CRCD Academy, they're enrolled in and have access to the same resources as any other college student has. And so that's unique also because the teachers are adjunct faculty of the college, so they too access resources of the college that then they can apply to their learning curriculum and so forth. What's also unique is that our Worksource Center, which is part of the Americans Job Center in the city of Los Angeles, is managed by the Economic and Workforce Development Department called Worksource Centers. So CRCD is one of 16 Worksource Centers in the city that collaborates with LA Trade Tech Community College to roll out the Vernon Central LATTC Worksource Center. And it's on campus of LA Trade Tech Community College. It's in the Tom Bradley Hall, right in the middle of campus. And so these same students who are enrolled in CRCD Academy not only can access resources that are available to all students on campus, but they also can access employment training and placement opportunities at the Worksource Center.
So you are, truly, creating that pipeline of opportunity. Tell me, for the folks who go through the CRCD Academy onto LA Trade Tech, are they then moving on to 4-year colleges, or are they moving right into the workforce? And if so, for those moving into the workforce, what are some of the sectors that they're moving into?
So our primary sectors are construction and hospitality. When young people are graduating from the academy, some do move into workforce, so they tend to move into the construction trades to be on a fast track to become union members, considering the construction boom in California, and many do. And some go on to post-secondary completion. They either stay at LA Trade Tech College, which most do, or they go to some of the other community college or 4-year universities here locally. And our staff provides support for whichever pathway they want to move in.
And what's been the impact of COVID-19 on those who were most recently employed or looking to be employed?
Well, the impact has been the college closed. And so because they closed, we had to do instruction remotely. We still was able to maintain contact with students, provide them with technological devices such as laptops and internet access so that they can actually do learning online. Employment, construction didn't stop. So training would take place both at our center or off-site. So CRCD Enterprises actually has a in-house training where certifications can be obtained, and some of the students in smaller groups, of course, obtain their certification, and some are on path to become apprentice with some of the local unions. For others that were more so on a track for post-secondary completion, it has been a challenge to navigate sort of the next steps that the college is going to take. The great thing is because of our partnerships, we're getting real-time information from the college. This situation with COVID has been so fluid where things change every week, sometimes every day.
Sure.
And we all have to make adjustments. And I think that's what the impact is helping young people or helping our constituents or folks we're working with navigate those uncertainties, because you don't know. And a lot of times we don't know either, but because we've maintained good partnerships, our partners do inform us as they're getting information, and then we can put together a plan on how to better support people moving forward.
Well, it's certainly in this environment, certainly important to know how to and learn how to pivot, because information is moving so quickly. You mentioned, two really robust sectors that were going really strongly in Los Angeles: construction, a lot of housing development, a lot of entertainment venues. Obviously, hospitality was going really strong with over 55 million visitors and lots of hotels being built. And that's been a sector that's been heavily impacted. What are some of the other sectors that you've been working in and maybe looking to position your youth to get involved in?
Well, one of the big ones that was starting to really take off was coding, being that a lot of industry has been moving downtown and in Santa Monica and within proximity of, the Blue Line or Exposition Line. Many of our students were becoming more interested in not only STEM, but also coding. And we were even hosting challenges at the college called Codecella. And, and at first
That's great.
when I heard that, I'm like, no, we can't take our young people to Coachella. But they said Codecella, and it was a unique challenge amongst young people where they would design websites for local small businesses and compete in that way. And the winner, of course, continued to work with those small businesses. So we saw that as another sector that really rose a lot of eyebrows of reaching into the creative talents of our young people. And that's what we tend to do, is create a platform for them to be creative and create multiple pathways for young people to seek careers. We all had one idea of what we wanted to do as a career, and ended up doing 2 or 3 different things or set on one thing. And so what we do is provide young people with various opportunities and pathways for employment. Coding just happens to be another. We've also done transportation, considering that's another booming industry with the ports and the need for truck drivers and other transportation in Los Angeles. So we provide resources through the WorkSource Center where young people or adults can access free training provided by the WorkSource Center as being enrolled in that. Security has also been another sector where there's growth, as well as not just being officers, but learning how to be either entrepreneurs to own your own security outfit. Some have gone in that path, or become managers and so forth. And then the college just has a host of other opportunities, not only in construction, but trades in general. But for CRCD, hospitality, construction, and coding has been our primary. And then I think our secondary has been security, helping people get guard cards, and helping people to get their Class A license to become truck drivers.
How do you move forward? What are you looking for, whether from government, foundations, or corporations, to help you identify, develop, and execute on these new workforce development initiatives? How do you partner with corporations to help the youth either learn about that industry or find a pathway into that industry? How does that work for you?
Well, we look at opportunities for business mentoring to where, and what we mean by that is where we work with different corporations where they can come and mentor us on how to develop and design programming that meets the standards that they're looking for in employees or apprentice that can come on board. Many of our young people, they're already participating in gaming and the use of social media anyhow, and you have those that are already interested in that field, and just getting some mentorship and guidance from them on that. The college has a host and partnerships with that industry. We've partnered with LA TriTech Community College to host actual companies in the tech industry to come on campus and talk to students about what they offer, and we want to continue to do that. Of course, COVID reduced the amount of in-person kind of interactions that can occur, but we've been hosting kind of job fairs and other fairs online, which is pretty unique that the team had come up with that concept and the city had come up with that concept. But I think long term, corporate philanthropy, private philanthropy, and government collectively can invest long term because these things require long term investment, not 1 year grants, not 2 year grants, but long term investments that are 3 to 5 years. We work with young people that have had the highest barriers coming to us. They either have come out of jail or prison or aged out of the foster care, and sometimes all three, or at least two, and then they're homeless. So they've faced a lot of barriers. It's going to take more than 1 year to work with that young person to get them at a sustainable level so that they can be successful. And so what we need and what organizations like us need that type of long-term investment. Philanthropy and corporate can come in because they have a little bit more flexibility to invest in other areas besides direct program services, where they can invest in the infrastructure of an organization to be able to continue to provide these services. Organizations that do deliver great services like this continuously invest in that infrastructure, in that administrative ability and back office capabilities to be able to support training and programming. And philanthropy and corporations have that flexibility to do so in partnership with government, which tends to fund primarily the direct services. And I think all three coming together, including our individual donors out there that we appreciate, helps us to put together a long-term platform to where we can, as you said, make pivots. Because during this era, we've all had to be forced to make pivots. And I think long-term commitment and long-term investment in those areas will allow us to prepare the next workforce.
That's great. We talked about workforce development work that you're doing and the housing work that you're doing and the focus on youth. I know another program area that you all are really proud of is the work that you all do in the area of arts and culture. And cultural heritage is a very strong and very rich part of South Los Angeles. Can you give our audience a sense of the rich cultural heritage overall of the Vernon Central area?
So we're very proud of this because CRCD is not necessarily considered an arts and culture organization, but because of our place-based community development work, we find ourselves in the center of arts and culture in the Vernon Central community. And as indicated earlier, Vernon Central has a rich history of Black Los Angeles because of where individuals, families settled. In the 20s, the 30s, and the 40s. The community being the original historic South Central Los Angeles. And I would say it also the birthplace of Los Angeles jazz because up and down Central Avenue, which is actually the historic corridor of the Vernon Central community, is the thoroughfare that connects South LA to downtown Los Angeles into Watts. But along that corridor, there was, between the 20s and even the 50s, there was a host of clubs and bars and restaurants and theaters that actually ran up and down Central Avenue. Central Avenue was a bustling corridor where there was black businesses, small businesses. There were beat cops. People may not know, but the great Tom Bradley, former mayor of Los Angeles, used to have a beat on Central Avenue as a beat cop.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Okay.
And so what we've been able to participate in is actually purchasing some of the rare historic buildings in the corridor. One is the historic Dunbar Hotel that was developed by a Caribbean family, the Somervilles, back in 1927 or 28. But it was also the, I want to say the fancy, or it was the place to be along Central Avenue where everyone from Duke Ellington to Billie Holiday can perform in other areas in Los Angeles. They can perform downtown, they can perform in Beverly Hills, but they couldn't stay in hotels in those areas. So what we consider the five-star hotel of today, Dunbar Hotel was the five-star hotel in the 20s.
Sure.
And so Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday, and a host of other celebrities, both in music and film, stayed at the Dunbar Hotel. And we've been able to, in partnership with Tom Safran and Associates, because CRCD does partner with reputable for-profit and nonprofit developers. With Thomas Safran and Associates, we were able to create Dunbar Village, bringing the first eatery in the neighborhood in decades, delicious at the Dunbar Hotel. And we've been able to change that particular community. We've also purchased the historic 28th Street YMCA. Many may not or may know that the historic 28th Street YMCA was the first YMCA to allow boardership and membership of black Americans or individuals of color. And we were able to purchase that building. It originally opened in 1928 as well to serve that population. Today, there's a mixed use of housing for special needs populations. And on the ground floor, we run our Youth Source Center, which is a center funded by the Economic and Workforce Development Department that funds youth employment. And we're one of 16 sites that actually run a youth source center called the Vernon Central Workforce Development Network, or VCN Youth Source Center.
Well, I know you mentioned the rich cultural heritage, and particularly the Central Avenue area and its rich history there. Certainly, one of the summer staples in here in LA is the Central Avenue Jazz Festival, which has been going strong. And I'm just so disappointed that the festival is not taking place this July as it normally does. What is CRCD's role in the Central Avenue Jazz Festival?
Besides being proud of preserving, being part of preserving Black Los Angeles history through the preservation of some of the more iconic buildings that not only is for Black Los Angelinos, but also just for Los Angeles as a whole, that benefits the community that's there, but reflects and celebrates the community that once was there in African Americans. But the Central Avenue Jazz Fest typically culminates a lot of the work that had been done throughout the year. We're working with young people, we're working with businesses, we're just doing our community development activities. And I too am disappointed because of COVID and just being safe that this year would have been the 25th anniversary of the Central Avenue Jazz Fest. So the councilman and his office, who leads the effort, they had a party for us planned for sure. But CRCD's role, specific to your question, is that we help out with a lot of the logistics and kind of be backstage support. So whether that's with setup, cleanup, whether that's with helping to recruit vendors, we actually provide a host of support for the planning efforts that take place in partnership and led by Council District 9, the councilman and his staff, as well as other organizations like Concerned Citizens of South Central Los Angeles and other community-based groups. But CRCD's role is specific because we feel that we are the backbone of the festival itself, because we do a lot of the behind the scenes, kind of the work that normally when you go to any other large function that the audience doesn't see. Our job is to make sure that people have an appreciation for the history of the community, not just the music and being able to patronize the vendor booths, but also feel the spirit and history of walking in the Dunbar Hotel and getting the sense and flavor of what it used to be in the 20s and in its heydays in the 30s. But more importantly, it's like a reunion of some sort of families that used to reside in the neighborhood or used to attend Jefferson High School in Fremont, but more so close to that neighborhood is Jefferson, and kind of come together and reminisce on what used to be. But also it feels really good for our young people to actually participate in the event, to not only understand and learn the historic and cultural relevance of a Central Avenue Jazz Fest, but what it actually means to people in Los Angeles, because we not only attract African Americans, we attract all races that make up Los Angeles. We too are disappointed. We've been involved at CRCD for 15 years at the Jazz Fest. I have been involved for probably almost 20 years.
Well, that's great because I've had the opportunity to attend a number of years now, and it's just such a great, joyful 2-day event in the end of July. And it's great to see CRCD so involved in that, because that speaks to also the opportunities on the workforce development side. Certainly, the creative economy. There are a number of reports that come out periodically on how important it is to the Los Angeles economy and in terms of jobs. So, what role does CRCD play in stimulating activity in the creative economy?
Because of COVID, a lot of those conversations have paused a bit, but we are funded through the Support Corporation Los Angeles, LISC, to actually manage and run a financial opportunity center that provides coaching to individuals in credit and accessing financing and so forth. And have been pretty successful because it's directly linked with our WorkSource Center. The interesting thing that has evolved since we've been running that program for the last 3 years is entrepreneurs that have graduated and completed certifications in the program. And those entrepreneurs are part of this creative economy.
Certainly, what we try to emphasize here, is the notion of collaboration and partnerships, and we always want to hear about how you value partnerships and speak to the types of partnerships that you're particularly proud of that helped you advance a particular objective. Can you speak to a collaboration or partnership that you're really proud of and that really helped you move the needle on an objective or two?
So I spoke a lot about the partnership with Los Angeles Trade Tech Community College, but I'm very proud of the collaboration that Trade Tech is a part of, but also other organizations like All People's Community Center, Los Angeles Conservation Corps, that help build out and frame the Vernon Central Workforce Development Network that targets young people between 16 and 22 years old, providing them with workforce, not only training, but just experience and placement and being able to earn a paycheck for the first time and place them on a path for educational success and career choices. I'm also particularly proud of how we partner with our financial intermediaries, particularly the Local Initiative Support Corporation and Enterprise Community Foundation. They both have come to the table to support CRCD's efforts in developing affordable and permanent supportive housing, and I would be remiss if not mentioning the Corporation for Supportive Housing as well. Those three entities in partnerships on a lot of the deals have been instrumental in us being able to build units in the community and provide vital service to homeless youth. And then our political partnerships, working with Councilman Kern Price, and moving a lot of the initiatives that he wants to move forward, but also just his office and him directly supporting the strategic direction of our organization. And also working directly with the mayor's office as well as our state and federal political officials. And so those are some of the more key partnerships, but I also want to mention one that we're part of, and that's the partnership with private philanthropy. Weingart Foundation, California Community Foundation, California Wellness Foundation, the Balmer Group, just to name a few. There are many more, just foundations that are not only giving out grants, but actually working with groups like ours to look at long-term change and how we change and how we leverage the partnerships that I before mentioned, so that we have the long-term impact that we want to see in the Vernon Central community of South LA, but also to leverage what we're doing in Vernon Central to see how it can be mirrored in other parts of Los Angeles. And so I'm very proud of those partnerships.
Mark, while you've got a lot of great work going on, what sort of new initiatives do you anticipate, and how can others get involved?
Well, one of the partnerships that I'm looking to expand on that's been very successful and it impacts our neighborhood greatly is the reentry population. A large percentage of individuals that are returning to communities return to South LA. Many times without the resources that are necessary for them to be able to move back into society and be successful and so forth. And we've been able to partner with a great organization called the Amity Foundation. They're one of the larger reentry service providers in the state of California, if not the country. They do a lot of work that comes from a place of really caring for the individuals, not just trying to warehouse individuals for resources, but actually want to see the type of change that we want to see in individuals that help participate, contribute to change in our community. So we would like, and we're working towards expanding that partnership. In fact, we have a unique housing project that's going to provide permanent supportive housing to individuals that are coming out or had come out of prison and or jail. That's looking for permanent housing after they complete transitional housing or complete other probationary obligations. They need a place to stay so that they can continue to build upon their families and contribute to the community. And so we're working with Amity to look at that as a model that can be implemented throughout the state, but definitely in South LA. And how people can get involved in CRCD is that they can go to our website at www.coalitionrcd.org. They can reach out to me directly through that website or to our staff directly. And we're always looking for collaborative opportunities that are intended and intentional about changing the lives of people that reside in Vernon Central. That is our primary goal. We don't engage and participate in all collaborations because honestly we shouldn't. But those that actually have economic outcomes that are beneficial to the people in Vernon Central, those are the type of partnerships we're looking for. We're always looking to meet and sit with developers. We're looking to meet and sit with those that provide social services to youth and adults, particularly in mental health services. We're always looking to raise the bar in being a high-performance organization. That means we have to continue to add more rigor to our training and to our service delivery model. And a part of that rigor is also intensifying the partnerships and capacities that we want to see happen in our area. We are tired of the same old song that goes around that states that South LA doesn't have capacity. So you have to look to other communities or those that work in other communities to provide some so-called capacity to South LA. And I'm here to say South LA has capacity. what South LA don't have that those communities has is the investment in the capacity to continue to provide the services that are needed. And so we're here to work with those groups and individuals that want to work with us in that capacity.
So, Mark, as you work to change lives and build neighborhoods responsibly, share with our audience how you define responsibly and how that informs your work and how you move forward, and particularly how you engage in partnerships and what you expect from those partners who come to you saying, hey, we'd love to partner with you on X, Y, and Z in South LA.
So how we define it, and this is from the very beginning, which is why we put responsible in our name, is being intentional about serving the people that's in the community. So that is the population that resides, that are stakeholders, that are investors in the Vernon Central community of South Los Angeles. Also being a good steward of resources that we receive from public and private sources and individual donors, and being able to leverage those resources to provide the necessary support that is needed for individuals. And then being respectful of neighborhood. And being respectful of neighborhood is also being respectful of the neighborhood that is there today and tomorrow, but also being respectful of the history that's there. And that's part of being a good steward of that history as well. And so when we approach a partner, that partner has to not only want to partner with us because they're looking to increase a developer fee on a housing project. They would need to be intentional about wanting to see change happen in the neighborhood, not only within the community that's built within this new building, but how that building is going to actually impact the community. So we're intentional about the community and being good stewards with the resources that are provided for that project. So we walk away with a jewel in the community, not just another 50 units. So we approach partnerships based on having not same, but like missions, where you are concerned and you have passion around seeing change happen in neighborhoods like ours, to where we continue to work together to see how we can make further investment or encourage further investment together in this neighborhood. Being and growing up in South LA, I'm real serious and passionate about that. And as we see more intentionality happen with the investment and partnerships in South LA, or particularly in Vernon Central, we will begin to see the type of necessary change that is deserved for the people that reside there.
Mark, we're really excited about the work that you have done, the work that you are doing, and kudos to the team that you've assembled to carry out such a wide range of important work. So we thank you for that. Before we leave, we always ask our guests to get a sense of them and their Los Angeles, or in this case, it could be your South Los Angeles for those who are not as familiar with South Los Angeles, and we need to direct people, below the 10 and to get off the freeway to actually explore the neighborhood. So we have a few lightning round questions to wind down our conversation, and as always, there's no right or wrong answer. There's just your Los Angeles. So where are you from originally?
I am from South LA originally. I grew up in the Manchester Square, or what they call the Vermont Knoll neighborhood.
And which community do you live in currently?
Currently, I live in the South Bay area. So that would be like the Gardena Torrance area.
Mobility, we always talk mobility since it's the topic that everyone talks about in Los Angeles. And so we always ask, Uber, Lyft, yellow cab, bike, bus, walk, metro, or scooter?
Uber.
Favorite LA restaurant or favorite South LA restaurant or two?
Favorite South LA restaurant is Delicious at the Dunbar Hotel, for sure. There is a second. It's a second one. We call it Pinky's, but it has a different name. It's a hamburger stand right at 51st and Central Avenue. It's
Okay.
been there for decades. My family that grew up in the neighborhood calls it Pinky's, but I'm sure it has a totally different name.
Well, we're going to call it Pinky's
Yeah.
for the purpose of this show. What's your favorite spot in LA to take a visitor?
Outside of, in South LA, of course, like to go in the Crenshaw Leimert Park area, and then, of course, down at the Dunbar, but definitely like to take people downtown. I think downtown has changed significantly over the last 15 years, but definitely over the last 5 to 10 years. There's a lot of activity that's happening downtown, a lot of unique eateries, bars, entertainment venues, small and large. And so that's where I like to take people because they typically want to go to the beach and things of that nature. And downtown doesn't get on the list a lot.
Lakers or Clippers?
Lakers,
Rams, Chargers?
neither.
Dodgers, Angels?
Dodgers.
Favorite park in LA or favorite park in South Los Angeles?
Actually, one of my favorite parks is South Park because of not a lot of the history, but that was a park that my family, grew up around. So South Park.
Terrific. Mark, this has been a great dialogue, and I really appreciate your time, and we all appreciate your service and the work that CRC does. Hopefully we can have you and your team on again to discuss the progress you're making. Certainly you have a lot of ideas to move your organization forward and to move the community forward. So we appreciate you being here, and we appreciate you kicking off this great series of conversations that we're having with other leaders in South Los Angeles. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed this program, and we hope you'll join us next week as we look forward to another great conversation about South Los Angeles and individuals who are moving our communities forward. Until we meet again, stay strong, get involved. To learn more about Civitas LA and share feedback on this program, or if you have a recommendation about future programs, please visit our website at www.civitasla.com. And we hope you'll connect with us on social media, on Facebook at Civitas LA, Instagram at Civitas_LA, and Twitter at Civitas_LA.